Esteemed colleagues, on the 31st of May last year, a distinguished scientist, an amazing personality and a good friend, Anatoliy Baryshnikov, died. And it's a great loss, not just for us, his friends, but for everyone working in the area of immune oncology and immunology. Let me tell you a few words about his life's work. He was born in Belarus in a very humble family. This autobiography was personally written by Anatoly, and notwithstanding the hardships that his life was paved with, he graduated from school brilliantly and he enrolled into the Vitebsk Medical University. Throughout his years of study, he managed to publish 16 papers. I think it's a lot, and today there are not so many students who will have so many publications while studying at school. Professor Novikov was his scientific advisor, and let me also emphasize that Anatoly Yurievich was a very outspoken, was a very vivid example of a loyal student. Mr. Novikov, Professor Novikov, was his first teacher, and Anatoly Baryshnikov would always tell everybody that Mr. Novikov was his teacher. He had to enroll to postgrad studies, but before doing this, he had to serve in the army, and so he had to get conscripted in the army. Since he was a medical professional, he liked telling about these times in the army, the years he spent in the army, and after leaving the army service, he met Mr. Moldavsky, who was the head of immunology and virusology in the Institute of Experimental Clinical Oncology. And then he came to us to study in our postgrad. You can see his picture taken in the lab. He was a very laborious person. You know, he came over from a very, from almost out of nowhere, right? We can call it. But in a year, he managed to learn and managed to master English language. He managed to master all the lab equipment. And as far as his energy is concerned, he would come every morning at 8 o'clock in the morning and then leave late at night, and that's his daughter. She's now in the head of the lab, named after him. Anatoly, in 1975, defended his candidate's thesis. It's called Experimental Materials on Researching Virus Therapy of Tumors in the Conditions of Hyperthermy and ER System. And back then, he decided to form a special task force, a special scientific group. Professor Moldavsky got sick back in the time, and our whole lab, and I was a part of this lab, and I was a part of this team, we decided to focus our efforts on immunotherapy and diagnostics of hyperplastosis. And Anatoly was the first one in the Soviet Union who got xenogenic serums and then monoclonal antibodies, T and B lymphocytes. So this is this is his team. They used to work together for the whole of his life. You see some informal social events are on those pictures, and based on the data he managed to find, he defended his doctor's thesis called Immunoglobal Antibodies in Diagnosing Sarcomas. Until 1992, he used to work in the lab of clinical immunology, and our group, our team, was responsible for obtaining those monoclonal antibodies. We developed a whole panel of monoclonal antibodies that are continued to be used. It's the so-called ECO series. You just see a number of patents and certificates he managed to obtain. And back in Gorky, which is now Nizhny Novgorod, we started producing an array of monoclonal antibodies for diagnostic non-lymphodes options of gemoblastosis of man. We developed not only the differential antibodies, you see the publications of the time, and he managed to publish his works and papers not just here in this country, but also abroad, and he also obtained monoclonal antibodies to assess the immune status of a man's body. And his developments laid the foundation for the diagnostics of immunoblastosis in the country. And since then, it's been developing quite rapidly. The first thing is immunotyping of this disease, and that's what was developed thanks to him in the country. All of his papers I'm not just showing to you. And then he went on to work in the Experimental Diagnostics and Therapy Institute, and he headed a lab called Biotherapeutic Methods of Treatment. Then he went on to the Biotherapy of Tumors lab, and this lab achieved great successes in the past, and it was awarded and recognized internationally and nationally. I will show you his students, and throughout his career he graduated 18 Doctors of Science and 70 Candidates of Science. The recent Doctor of Science, the one who he supervised, defended his doctor's thesis just 2 months ago. Back in 1996, he became a director, and he served as a director of this institute until his last days, the Institute of Experimental Diagnostics and Therapy. And he was deputy director of the Oncological Scientific Center. So here are the patents, just some of the examples of the works he did. All in all, there are 54 patents. He used to have 54 patents. I think it serves as an evidence that he was a very active, a very energetic person. And since 2001, he was the founder and the editor-in-chief of the Russian Biotherapeutical Journal. This magazine is still published, and this journal, this magazine, has a very good rating, an international rating. Moreover, he has published 37 chapters in books, 15 various individual papers, and various other articles. Of course, he was a member of multiple societies, the Moscow Society of Oncology, and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, it so happened that he didn't manage to become an academician of our Medical Academy of Science. However, I do believe he was worthy of that title. He was also an honorary scientific professional. He was given multiple awards from the Russian Federation, and there's another award that is rarely awarded to people in oncology. It's an award of Professor Chukolin in immunology, because in the recent times he was really focused on immunology. You see, there's so many publications, and he has a very high Hershey's index, which is 26 for our country. It's an unprecedented level. And there has been one other area that he wanted to pursue in his institute, in his lab of biotherapy. He wanted to develop and to obtain biologically active proteins of plants. He was developing technologies of humanization of monoclonal mice antibodies. He was creating nanoplantibodies versus various antigens. And this is the kind of activities that are currently being carried out in the institute. This is the recent picture of Anatoliy Baryshnikov 2 days before his death. We were in Kazan back then, and there was a meeting that was dedicated to immunology role in treating hemoblastosis and oncology and so on. There were leading scientists of various institutes and directors of various research centers. We built lots of plans there, and we had many hopes. But this last day, together with the directors of those institutes, we were discussing what kind of joint research we could carry out. But unfortunately, these plans could not become a reality just one day after Anatoliy Baryshnikov was no more. Hopefully we, his friends and his students, will remember him for the rest of our lives, and the things he developed, the things he produced, his life's work, I'm pretty sure, will be taken on board by his students and by his colleagues. And in our lab, we are continuing his research, and in his work will he live. Thank you.